two sections that actually talk on the front yard areas and the allowable fence height. This just states that it can't exceed 48 inches or 4 feet. This applies to fences within the front yard area, including for corner lots, they'll have two frontages. This is that second code section, just reiterating that same point. And it looks like I'm having difficulties with the screen. See if that loads, but it is included in the staff report too.
As he's helping you with this, is the request, oh, there it is, to add 2 additional in the front yard or to change?
It's to allow for the fence to essentially remain. So it can be erected, but it didn't meet code at the time of erection and it didn't have a variance.
Okay. It didn't meet code at that time.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Got it.
This image, if it displays, maybe I have to restart the.
Mine is open the presentation.
There we go. This image shows the fence height restrictions. The purple line shows the areas which a 6-foot fence could be erected, and then the yellow shows where a fence height of up to 4 foot would be allowable. Keeping in mind that there would still need to be a vision triangle at the intersections as well. Now overviewing the findings of fact, the first finding of fact asks whether a special condition or circumstance exists which are peculiar to the land that are not applicable to other like zone properties. While the site does have some characteristics such as slope, topographic conditions, especially at the northwest corner of the lot may also be considered especially narrow due to building orientation of the lot. These circumstances are not preventing the property owner from complying with the zoning code. They're still able to reasonably develop and make viable use of their property if they were to conform to this. Furthermore, it is staff's opinion that the request may cause the type of fence would be along the front property line, creating a decreased line of sight and visibility at the intersections, as well as decreasing open space. Lastly, the request would be inconsistent upon the limitations of other properties that within the regulatory zone, and as such, a request for another residential corner lot would be denied administratively. The second finding of fact asks if a right would be deprived of the property owner that is commonly enjoyed by other properties. Staff finds that the request would not result in a hardship of the property owner. Firstly, other properties within the established zoning district or regulatory zone, including residential corner lots, are not allowed to build a fence that exceeds the maximum allowable fence height of 4 feet in the front yard area. Secondly, the strict application does not result in an exceptional or undue hardship on the property owner, as they are not being deprived of developing the property in the same manner as surrounding properties or other residential corner lots, and as such, staff does not find that this criteria is met. The third finding of fact asks whether conditions or hardships experienced by the applicant are self-imposed. While any lot characteristics or building characteristics and orientations are not at fault of the applicant, the request of a fence height higher than 4 feet within the designated front yard area is at the choice and direction of the applicant. The applicant is presented with other alternatives for the site, including maintaining a 4-foot tall fence within the front yard area or maintaining a privacy fence of 6 foot tall within the rear or side yard area of the home. Staff does also want to acknowledge that the 6-foot fence is required for the construction of the pool. That is part of agenda item 5B. And it is the desire to construct that above ground pool within the front yard area. However, the applicant is able to place such structure within the rear yard area of the home while meeting fence height requirements appropriate to the regulatory zone and property type by making adjustments at the property. So as such, staff can't find that the criteria is met. And then the last finding of fact asks if a special privilege would be granted to the applicant that is otherwise denied to other land structures or buildings within the same zoning district. A right of special A right or a special privilege would be granted in this request if approved, as other buildable properties within the R1 zoning district are not able to construct a 6-foot tall fence within the front yard areas, including residential corner lots. So as such, staff does not support this finding of fact as well. Some points to consider. The first one is that the request is not favorable towards one or more findings of fact outlined in the zoning code. The second is that the variance is not created by the regulations, and it arises from an action or a desire of the applicant. The fencing is visible from the adjacent public streets and at the street intersection, including North Kenwood Boulevard and West Euclid Avenue. At the time of construction and erection of the fence, the zoning code did not allow for fences located within the front yard area of a residential zoning district to exceed 4 feet in height. Granting the variance would provide a right or privilege that other properties do not have. Deviation would not be in harmony with the intent and purpose of the zoning code. And then lastly, an unnecessary hardship does not exist if the request is denied. As such, staff is recommending that the request be denied. If the variance request were to be approved, the Board of Adjustment should just summarize the minutes and the order its reasons. Any questions?
Questions? Clarify for me one more time. When did the zoning code change?
That would have been May of 2021. However, the previous code still applied. I think I included that in the staff report, but I can pull up.
I was looking for that to see. And would it have had to be 4 feet? So if you're on a corner lot, you never know what until you buy the lot. Would it have to be 4 feet all the way down the side?
Yeah, so anything within that front yard, so anything past the extent of the house. So if you have your house here and this is the street, anything past that extent has to be 4 foot or under. It couldn't exceed that height.
But after your house, can it be 6 feet?
Yeah. So it could be tapered up in the rear yard, backyard area, up to 6 feet. But anything past that has to be 4 foot according to code.
I'm getting confused on the past. So anything on the side of his garage has to be 4 feet.
Yeah.
Side of the garage to the corner.
So this kind of shows it more, but the purple line here that I'm
Coming
highlighting.
out also out to all the way to the sidewalk. But it has to be, if you moved it all the way to the sidewalk where the yellow line is, I'll say parallel. Outside, right there where you have it, marker to the white, that would have to be 4 feet according to code in 2021.
In
Even the
2021, yes.
And
where your
code,
cursor
and the code before.
In
Okay.
current code, yes.
And the backyard too.
Not backyard, so
I think
this
the back,
shows
as you turn the corner there, where the yellow is.
right
you
here.
go down to Euclid. And continue on to the neighboring lot behind it, right there. And as you turn to wires equal to his, yep, that would have to be 4 feet.
Yes, because it would be past the extent of the house. So the extent of the house is right here. So anything past that would be considered a front yard and would require up to 4
Because
foot.
it's blocking the vision of the neighbor or of the corner.
It's there's a multitude of factors for this code. So for one, visibility at the intersections, but then two, just maintaining open space within the front yard areas. If it's enclosed, we do have requirements that front yard fences have like a minimum amount of openness to them, as well as being set back from the sidewalk. Those were not in place in 2021, so that wouldn't be applicable. But the height still would be.
And the white line, so straight up from where your cursor is now is where the fence is today.
And did they pull a building permit then?
We don't require fence permits at the city. If people call in, we would tell them what the zoning regulations.
And not you, because you weren't around then,
Not me,
but
no.
as someone that recently tried to look through if you needed a building permit or not, it can sometimes be confusing on whether you need one or not. So, yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Amy?
Was there anything from neighbors? This was sent out?
And their request is to put this pool up within where the white fence is today.
Generally in this area right Staff's thought on this request is they could still meet this zoning code requirement, but possibly have an accessory structure within this area if they swapped the two. So if they had the pool in the rear yard area, met the 6-foot requirement back here, and then 4 foot in the front yard areas, that would be acceptable, and it would meet the findings of fact as.
And what is our zoning code for swimming pools?
For what?
Swimming pools.
You do have to have you have to have at least a 6-foot fence around the swimming pool. Tim's better at explaining this. There are alternatives that you can utilize for swimming pools, so that includes building a fence on the swimming pool and then around it. He's way better at explaining that than I
Not
am.
if you've had a pool, you wouldn't want to put a fence on it, but okay.
But it would extend that height, so that way children can't hide.
Just an FYI. And so this is maybe an aside. Looking, as I drove around to look at this, on Kenwood, there's another pool and it does not look to be enclosed. And I would suggest that maybe Tim goes out and checks it if that is the requirement, because I'd hate to have someone get hurt. As someone that owns a pool and has a 6-foot fence, because I wanted a 6-foot fence, I just would suggest someone would check that.
I'll pass that.
And if, just let me know after that's been reviewed, please.
Thank you. Comments from the public?
I'm Mike Shoemaker. I live at this property we're talking about. I called the city where the fence was constructed to see what I had to do. The first call, they misinterpreted what I was trying to get across. I wanted to come off the back of my garage over to the sidewalk and down, just like it is constructed now. Whoever I was speaking with thought I wanted to come off the front of my garage and advised me that if I did that, my fence would have to be 4 foot tall. Actually, my wife called first. After hearing that, I called back and wanted to talk to somebody. And in the conversation, something was brought up about coming off the front of my garage, and I said, no. I want to come off the back of my garage. And after hearing that, they said, oh, it was a miscommunication. You're okay with that. Coming off the back of the garage is fine. I think it was a communication error between them and I, them thinking I was coming off the back of my garage to the west instead of to the south.
Right.
But you don't have to pull a permit to put up a fence. So fence was constructed after hearing that I was okay to do so. And then nothing's ever been said until now. I want to put a pool because that is the flattest spot in my yard. Everything else slopes to the north and to the west a little bit. So therefore, I thought we would be okay because you had to have a 6-foot fence around a pool. I've got that. I just wanted to put a pool up, and so here we are, I guess. So in my opinion, I don't think it creates, I don't see the benefit of a 4-foot fence. I mean, it's just going to allow you to see my 6-foot fence. I mean, it's not going to open up anything. I don't, because of the back of my garage, I mean, you're still a good 75 to 100 feet from the intersection. There is no sight.
So you're saying that it doesn't interfere with the intersection?
I don't feel that it does. I don't see how. I mean,
And that is
It's a four-way-
the section that we're concerned with. We're not
Right.
concerned about the neighbor's visibility or anything else.
That's right.
it's a 4-way stop, so, I mean,
I,
nobody should be going through and having to see. You can get, I mean, with the Wilder School up the hill at 8 o'clock in the morning and at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it's busy. There's not been one accident that I know of there.
I take that intersection all the time. There's no visibility issues.
Yeah, I
In
don't,
fact, I thought you wanted it, I was confused in reading this, and I was thinking you were wanting it in the section that there's no fence. And then I thought, well, it does block it off, so I was a little surprised when I drove past. And, oh, it's already fenced in, it's back there and it's back behind it, so I was surprised. I mean, I didn't see a corner visibility issue. Now, as you had the drawing, I could see the neighbor visibility issue, but I couldn't see the corner visibility.
And
But
none of
I
my-
understand the code is how it sets.
and I've had several, when they got their cards, come to my house and ask what I was doing, and I explained to them, and not one of them had an issue with with what's being done or what's already been done, so.
So as noted in our report, notification letters were mailed to surrounding property owners regarding this in July 26th. So there's been an opportunity for people, if they had any responses, to share them with us. And that hasn't happened. So that's duly noted, okay? Any other questions or?
So,
Yes, go ahead.
yeah, so if the fence was lowered to 4 foot and then gradually back up, that wouldn't meet code for the pool, correct?
It wouldn't meet this one.
They'd have to put a second fence in.
Straight off the back of the garage to the west.
Well, I don't have room for a pool without then moving my accessory built, my shed. But again, I don't have a good level spot to do that. There would be a lot of grading work have to be done to move my shed to get this fence where they want it, I guess.
So this is that shed location. This is where the topographic conditions mainly are. That
But there's a large tree there. There's not enough, my shed's 20 foot long.
Yeah.
There's not 20 feet between that tree and the rest of my fence on the north side. I mean, I'd have to remove a tree just to comply with the fence. This is a 30-year-old tree. I mean,
Sure.
and again, my backyard does this. The tree is here, north of fence here, is at the bottom of that slope.
Because it is. I mean, you're going downhill there.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, both Kenwood and Euclid do this. I'm at the top,
You're at the top of
unfortunately.
the hill.
So it seems to me that we're really, as you'd said before, our primary consideration was the intersection, visibility for the intersection. And our secondary consideration, it seems to me, is who do we best serve with whatever decision we make? If
Not a
there,
precedent for somebody else.
that's right. That's right. And for instance, if we vote in favor of this, we need to make sure, and I'm not positive that's gonna happen, that we've taken special considerations into our decision-making process. That would be extenuating circumstances that would not just set a precedent. Right, don't you agree with that?
I agree. The only thing I would say is that based on the time frame and the 5/21 when the codes went in, and I'm assuming summer of 21 when you maybe had a date here, I just don't remember off the top of my head, when you contacted about the fence, and the codes were just changing then. Though, again, you just don't have to ask to put a fence in.
Yeah, had there been a permit,
Or an easy
Required.
place, or an easy place to look to say.
then they would have come out and saw what I was wanting to do. I would have known then that I wouldn't be able to do that and wouldn't have constructed it. Like I say, I feel it was a miscommunication between me and the city.
Back or just as we
When I
were-
said, coming off the back of the garage, I wanted to go this way, they thought I was going this way.
Right, just as we were having that problem with
Right.
the picture in front of us. just if we make a note, I mean, those are some things that we should have on a website, easy, and we re-put on Facebook all the time. It's springtime. If you're gonna build a fence, look at the rules. Here's if you're gonna put a pool in. Here's if you want an accessory building, this is what you need to do. It should be easy information. This is when you need a permit, this is when you don't.
And I can connect with Erin on getting something started. on
Yeah, it
social
needs
media
to be,
just
yeah,
reoccurring.
out there and reoccurring and easy place to get because it is a little complicated to go through the code to find
It is.
the 5 places it's in there. Yeah.
Thank you. You've been very helpful.
Thank you.
Yes. Any other questions or concerns? Hearing none, I'll call for a motion.
I will tell you, I've gone back and forth on this, so. But I move to approve it. And I can't put this in the motion, so this is the aside. Because the pre-existing fence and because of the date of the code, I would move to approve the 6-foot fence where it's existing today. If you came today and asked for it, I'd say no, but today I'd say yes.
I will second that motion.
We'll take a vote then.
Okay, Amy Mitchell,
Yes.
Jane Whalen,
Yes.
and Lee Bash.
Yes.
And I will just say the hardest part is setting precedent. And that's what we try not, and we don't look at people, we don't set precedent because of it, but what's best for the community. So if you came today and said, I want to put in a 6-foot fence there and I live on a corner lot and we'd have a slope and we'd say, maybe it's not the best place for a pool. But
There are extenuating
yours are
circumstances.
kind of extenuating
Right.
only because of the dates and we know it took a while to get those codes written.
There's no safety issue.
No,
No.
exactly.
That's right. If there were, things would probably be different.
Right,
But
no,
these are extenuating circumstances that are unique to this case. Okay,
Correct.
having said that,
And let's make sure that's in the notes, is that it's unique to this case, because we're not setting precedent.
right. Yeah, I think it's important for that to be noted. That brings us to item number 2, which is to consider request from Michael Shoemaker to vary from accessory structure location requirements.
Michael Shoemaker has submitted a variance application for 601 North Canwood Boulevard. The request is to vary from accessory structure location requirements, allowing an accessory structure to be placed within the front yard area. This proposal will not conform to section 165.04.2D3 of the zoning code. This just shows a site plan of the proposal. They are showing a proposed pool, which would be within this identified front yard area. This shows the subject property zoning and the land use map again. This is the zoning code item that relates to this, which just states that accessory buildings and structures shall be erected to the rear of the principal building. And then this specifies again for corner lots that the front yard regulation shall apply to each street frontage, that no accessory building or structure shall be located within either of the front yards. Overviewing the findings of fact. The first finding of fact asks whether a special condition or circumstance exists which are peculiar to the land that are not applicable to other like zoned properties. The subject area does include slope or topographic conditions, including at the northwest corner, which may impact the siting of an accessory structure on the site. Similarly, the site may also be considered an exceptionally narrow lot due to the building orientation on the lot, which we will detail in the next few slides. So this shows an overview of the lot in question. The measurements that are provided on the subdivision plat for the lot, we can see that the south frontage here is 74.80 feet. And then the east frontage is 119.81 feet wide. This shows the identification markers for what property lines would be classified as what. So the west property line would be considered the side property line. The rear would be the north property line. When a building is oriented along the widest frontage, which would be this east frontage here, it can decrease the rear yard area as it shifts that area to the side yard instead, which is narrower in width. And as a result, this can result in an exceptionally narrow lot that is limited in accessory structure placement for the site. With that, staff does find that could be viewed favorably. The second finding of fact asks if a right would be deprived of the property owner that is commonly enjoyed by other properties. The applicant could be deprived of a right as there is limited buildable area on the site to construct an accessory structure as indicated in the previous analysis, and as such, staff finds that this criteria is met. The third finding of fact asks whether conditions or hardships experienced by the applicant are self-imposed. The applicant is not responsible for any of the topographic conditions on the site, the building orientation, it was built, I believe, in the 1980s, nor the lot dimensions, all which are contributing to limiting the siting of an accessory structure on the site. So as such, staff is finding that this criteria is met. And the last and final finding of fact asks if a special privilege would be granted to the applicant that is otherwise denied to other structures or buildings within the same zoning district, because the siting of an accessory structure is limited due to topographic conditions and due to the lot being exceptionally narrow. The request would grant the property owner leave to allow the construction of an accessory structure that most properties would have a right to. As such, staff finds this finding favorably as well. The following are points to consider with this request. The first is that all findings of fact are favorable as outlined in the zoning code. The second is that topographic conditions, including slopes at the northwest corner of the property, limits the siting of an accessory structure. The site is considered exceptionally narrow due to the primary building being oriented towards the widest street frontage. Granting the variance won't provide a right or privilege that other properties do not have under the zoning code regulations. Deviation would be in harmony with the intent and purpose of the zoning code, and an unnecessary hardship does not exist if does exist if the request is denied. That should it is in the staff report. It should be reflected accordingly in the staff report. So as such, staff is recommending approval of the variance. If it were to be denied, Board of Adjustment just needs to be prepared to summarize its reasonings for that. If there are any questions.
Questions? No, only, but flip back to the question. I don't understand, and I've read it, and I've read the thing, and I looked at your picture. Are you moving your shed from where it's at today?
I just want to place my pool inside my fence.
Yeah.
That just happens to be the most level spot.
Oh, and then,
In
and
my
I
shed.
keep going accessory storage. I got it. And the pool is considered accessory storage?
Accessory structure.
Really? Okay.
And it's an above ground pool, so.
Oh, because that's why.
Right.
That's why. I was gonna,
You missed.
no, I was thinking of my pool and I was calculating square footage and I was like, whoa, I don't think it does that, does it? Okay, because it's above ground structure. Got it. Alrighty.
Any other questions? Are there any comments you'd like to share with us? Thank you. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Therefore, I call for a motion.
I move to approve it.
I hear a second.
Second.
Thank you. I think we're ready for a vote.
Okay. Lee Bash,
Yes.
Jane Whalen,
Yes.
Amy Mitchell.
Yes.
Could not understand. We were moving, I kept moving the shed or someplace and I couldn't figure out where it was going to. I looked at the picture and it didn't look like it.
That brings us to item C in our new business. We're going to consider a request from Jay Clark to vary from the 40-foot minimum required front yard setback by 25 feet for a total front yard setback of 15 feet, and to vary from the 40-foot required rear yard setback by 10 feet for a total rear yard setback of 30 feet.
So some background about this is Matthew Pellin, on behalf of Jay and Brenda Clark, has submitted a variance application for 203 West 2nd Ave. The request is to decrease the front yard and the rear yard setbacks for their C2 zoned property And this proposal would not conform to section 165.05.3 of the zoning codes. So the proposed drawing shows the site, plan for the site if the variance were to be approved by the Board of Adjustment there on the screen. The request is to vary from the 40-foot required front yard setback by 25 feet for a total front yard setback of 15 feet, and to vary from the 40-foot required rear yard setback by 10 feet for a total rear yard setback of 30 feet. The proposed building is an office building that will be used for therapy services. And again, this request does not conform to section 165.05.3 of the city codes and ordinances. The image on the left shows the subject property zoned for the C2 Highway Commercial Zoning District. And the image on the right shows the subject property is having a future land use map designation of regional mixed use, which guides for uses such as retail, office, restaurants, bars, and other personal, business, or commercial services. And again, the proposed building will be used for therapy services. So the code is stated here by this graph above, and it shows that for C2 zoning districts, the front yard setback should be 40 feet and the rear yard setback should be originally 10 feet. But because this site specifically adjoins a residential R1 or R2 zoning district, it increases that rear yard setback from the original 10 to now a 40-foot setback.
State that one more time, because it's beside.
Because of the site, let me pull up a picture right here. So it's like an L-shaped property,
Right.
and because it is adjacent to residential property in the rear, that's gonna increase that original 10-foot to this 40-foot now.
And that includes the commercial property as well, currently used residentially.
So now going into the finding of facts, which must all be found favorably. The first finding of fact asks whether special conditions or circumstances exist which are peculiar to the land that are not applicable to other like zone properties. The shape of the lot is irregular in characteristic and layout due to its L-shaped configuration, which limits the siting of the building. Additionally, the site is adjacent to residential uses. Adjacency to a residentially developed or zoned property imposes greater setbacks for the commercial property, which is going to make it harder to reasonably develop the site. For the average commercial property in the C2 zoning district, the rear yard setback, as stated, is usually 10 feet. However, due to the adjacency of the residential property to the south, the rear setback is increased to 40 feet. This adjustment introduces additional constraints that are specific to this property. Given the property's irregular configuration and unique circumstances that do not apply to other properties within the same zoning district, staff finds that this criteria is met. The second finding of fact asks if a right would be deprived of the property owner that is commonly enjoyed by other properties. Staff finds that applying the front yard and rear yard setback requirements would place significant constraints on the development of the subject property, depriving the applicant of the ability to utilize the property in a manner consistent with other properties within its zoning district. And if the site were required to meet setback requirements, the subject area would have a buildable footprint that is approximately 1,200 square feet. This does not account for the need to provide off-street parking to service the site, on-site circulation, and other site development requirements outlined in the code. Because of that, staff finds that this criteria is also met. The third finding of fact asks whether conditions or hardships experienced by the applicant are self-imposed. The unique challenges associated with this property are not the direct result of any actions taken by the applicant. The applicant is limited in alternatives for reasonable use of the property. Because of that, staff finds that this criteria is met. And the fourth and final finding of fact asks if a special privilege would be granted to the applicant that is otherwise denied to other lands, structures, or buildings within the same zoning district. Staff does not find that a special right or privilege would be granted to the property that other properties within the C2 zoning district do not have if the variance was approved, because no alternatives exist for the applicant to make reasonable use of the site. So staff finds that this criteria is met. Some points to consider is that this variance is favorable towards all findings findings of fact outlined in the zoning code. The property is unique due to the characteristics of the site and the established use on the site. The irregular shape and characteristics of the site, including adjacency to residentially zoned and developed properties, limits the siting and placement of a commercial building. Granting the variance would not provide a right and privilege that other properties do not have. Proposed property meets the intent and purpose of the zoning code, and a hardship could exist if the request is denied, as the applicants would not be able to make reasonable economical use of the land. So overall, staff is recommending approval of the variance request presented.
Are there any questions? Hearing none, are there some comments from the public? Come forward, please.
I'm Leonard Yakavon. I own Faust Body Shop, right close to that area there. I just was wanting to know what was the plan about, what are they gonna put in there? What's the idea? I mean, if a restaurant or a bar or something, my guys kind of wanna know.
It's just gonna be, let me pull back that picture. It's just gonna be that site up there, and it's gonna be used just for therapy services, so no
Therapy.
restaurants or anything like that.
Okay, yeah, 'cause I mean, it's kind of a weird shaped lot there and there was a house and a garage all that stuff there before, and then I know it's zone difference. Okay, so I just wanna kind of find out what was gonna be going in there, cause I know it's just been an empty lot, so.
So
I
it
think-
shouldn't have a lot, probably not a lot of traffic, and there's parking lot access for people going in and out of there.
Yeah, I was gonna say on Buxton there, we got a little bit of parking, not very much, so it's already really crowded there. So, okay.
Because Lenny's right across the street there.
Yeah, I'm across Caddy Corner from that. So, okay, thanks. That's what I need to know.
Good.
Yeah.
Are there any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call for the motion.
I move that we approve.
I second.
Thank you, and we'll take our roll.
Alright. Mitchell,
Yes.
Bash,
Yes,
Whalen.
Yes.
thank you. Motion is approved, and that moves us to item D on our agenda to consider a request from John and Tammy Hoyman for a variance for property located at 1301 Country Club Road.
So John and Tammy Hoyman have submitted a variance application for 1301 Country Club Road. This request is to allow for an oversized accessory structure on the property. The proposal would not conform to section 165.04.2 E1 of the City of Indianola Code of Ordinances. So on the screen, the proposed image shows the proposed carport accessory structure for the site if the variance were to be approved by the Board of Adjustment. The request is to permit the construction of an accessory structure that would exceed the maximum allowable square footage for accessory structures in a residential zoning district, which is 1,800 square feet. The proposed 546 square foot accessory structure, combined with the two pre-existing accessory structures, would result in a total square footage of 2,602 square feet. The existing property is a single-family residential dwelling and contains two pre-existing accessory structures. The image above shows the pre-existing three-car garage with the proposed carport addition. And again, this request does not conform to section 165.04.2.E1. The image on the left shows the subject property zoned for the R1 single-family residential detached zoning. The image on the right shows the subject property as having a future land use map designation of low-density residential land use. This land use designation guides for 2 to 5 dwelling units per gross acre with residential building types, including single-family detached dwellings, accessory dwelling units, and non-traditional single-family forms. So this image displayed shows the property with the house, which is on the far right side, the pre-existing 3-car garage, which is in the middle with the proposed carport, and the pre-existing accessory structure at the back of the property. The two existing accessory buildings are a total of 2,056 square feet. One is a 3-car garage that is 1,440 square feet, and the other is a woodworking shop that is 616 square feet. The existing accessory structures exceed the 1,800 square foot size maximum by 250 square feet, but are allowed due to being grandfathered in. The carport would be an additional 546 square feet, creating a total of 2,602 square feet of accessory structures on the property. So the city zoning code that the variance is being requested for is the one shown, which just talks about the accessory buildings and structures and their area and height limit, showing the total square footage of 1,800 square feet of maximum area allowed. Now overviewing the findings of fact, which again must all be found favorably. The first finding of fact asks whether special conditions or circumstances exist which are peculiar to the land that are not applicable to other like zoned properties. The zoning code allows for no more than 1,800 square feet of accessory structures. The property already contains 2,056 square feet of accessory structures. There are no special circumstances or conditions which requires a need for the applicant should be allowed to have an additional 546 square feet of accessory structures, which exceeds the maximum requirement. The staff finds that this criteria is not met. The second finding of fact asks if a right would be deprived of the property owner that is commonly enjoyed by other properties. Staff finds that the applicant is not being deprived of a right that is otherwise commonly enjoyed by other properties within the zoning district. Other properties within this established zoning district are not allowed to build an oversized accessory structure that exceeds the maximum allowable size of 1,800 square feet. So if this application was approved, this applicant would have a right that other properties do not have. The maximum square footage requirement does not create an unnecessary hardship upon the applicant, but more so an inconvenience, as the property owner can still make reasonable and economically viable use of the property. If required to conform to zoning code requirements relating to maximum allowable accessory structure size. So staff finds that this criteria is not met. The third finding of fact asks whether conditions or hardships experienced by the applicant are self-imposed. The request of the variance is out of desire rather than need. Staff acknowledges that the applicant currently has an agreement with Wesley Life, the adjacent property to the west, that allows them to use an old farm building for storage and equipment, and that the building is scheduled for demolition in August. The proposed additional accessory structure would be used to replace the covered storage lost to demolition. However, nonconformities are only permitted and allowed to be used until they are removed or demolished. And additionally, this accessory structure would become disproportionately large and disrupt the character and integrity of the neighborhood. It would establish a precedent for future development and alter the character of residential neighborhoods. Alternative storage spaces can be utilized within the existing accessory structures or off of property. So staff finds that this criteria is not met. The fourth and final finding of fact asks if a special privilege will be granted to the applicant that is otherwise denied to other lands, structures, or buildings within the same zoning district. If this variance were to be granted to allow for an oversized accessory structure, staff finds that a special right or privilege would be granted to the property that other properties do not have. So staff finds that this criteria is not met. Some points to consider is that the variance is not favorable towards one or more finding of facts outlined in the zoning code. The variance is not created by the regulations and arises from an action or desire of the applicant to construct an oversized accessory structure. Granting the variance would provide a right and privilege that other properties do not have. Deviation from the code would not be in harmony with the intent and purpose of the code, which is to protect the general welfare of the neighborhood. And an unnecessary hardship does not exist if the request is denied, as the applicant has other avenues that are up to code requirements. With all of this in mind, the city of Indianola recommends to deny the variance request.
So I have a question. According to the drawings, it appears to, some of the drawings appear that the carport is open and others make it clear that it's closed. I assume that it's, the carport section is to be closed. Is that correct?
I'm John Hoyman. My wife Tammy is here with me. I live at 1301 Country Club Road and have for the last 24 years. The closed versus unclosed option is a good question. And because the village is planning on developing the pasture, if you will, behind us, which is many acres and several hundred feet behind us before you can see development on Wesley Lane, which from our place, you only see rooftops. We don't know exactly what they're going to do. They've been very good about providing screening for their residents. And if they were to develop berms or plantings or a fence, then it might dictate what we do. And I wanted to leave the option open whether we do a hedge or a privacy fence. So that it looks good for them, for us, and it makes sense for all.
I'm still not sure you answered my question about whether the building is open or enclosed.
Picture shows it open except for the north end.
Mhm.
The north end has a door designed in it. That's to give a bit of a screen from Scott Felton Road. I looked through some houses on Scott Felton Road to the north of us. You cannot see any of this from Country Club Road. It is not the full width of the 3-car garage. It is shorter than that. But, and then we were kind of thinking about the north wind and the snow blowing in from the north and that kind of thing. So that led to that door being there. But the rest of it does plan to be open unless a condition is imposed by the board to enclose it, which we'd be glad to do. When I met with Emily and Tim, we talked about an open one, a carport type structure, and there was no talk of a required enclosure. But I'm open to whatever the board thinks would be right.
And the code's the same, whether it's open or closed.
So anything is an accessory building, whether it's a pool, whether it's a carport, whether it's a garage, whether it's a, I don't know, pickleball court. I don't know, that's an extreme. That'd be flat, so that wouldn't be.
It's also, and we have updated our codes recently, so anything that has vertical height to it would be considered an accessory structure. So previously, and would count against the size limitations. So previously, we included that swimming pools in ground and above ground would count towards the size requirement. That is no longer the case. Just above ground would count towards that size requirement because it creates like a visibility obstruction, and it does minimize the amount of open space that a lot would have. So in staff's interpretation of the code and how it's been updated in it's been a process of like the last 3 months or so. Anything that is has that vertical height, that would be considered an accessory structure. Anything that's in ground isn't considered one and doesn't count towards that size limitation.
I can't think what else would be above, but the 1,800 square feet hasn't changed. In the last 3 months, we haven't changed that, the 1,800, no.
Yeah, that hasn't.
There's more to that, the total area of accessory buildings. And if you look at it's my page 59 that was printed off by Tara for me. Under 165.042, accessory buildings and structures, area and height limit. Number 1, accessory buildings and structures shall be limited to a maximum of 2 total buildings, which we are not exceeding because we're not adding a third.
Right.
We will have 2, including a garage, of which all total accessory buildings shall not occupy more than 10% of the total lot area, nor exceed the total square footage of 1,800 square feet. So my math comes up with total accessory square footage, if this variance is approved, of between 4 and 5% of our total lot. I would like you to put up that picture again with the parcel numbers on it, if you would, please. This blue line is misleading because our property line goes all the way up here. This is a separate lot by virtue of a different parcel number. But this is our home lot. It's 300 feet by 175. A football field is 300 feet by 160 feet. This lot could be divided into easily 4 different lots, maybe 5. But it's not going to be while we're there, that's for sure. And if it were to be divided into those lots and create this kind of, I'll get the words in a minute. everything would have to be scraped off this lot.
Sure.
All the buildings to make it work. So we're not packing in 2,600 square feet in this lower 175 by 75. If you see what I'm saying.
Can you point out where the structures are today?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, there we go.
this is
That's
a
a
street
great
view
one.
from Country Club Road.
Good.
This is our driveway. There's the 3-car garage. This is a 2-car garage that used to actually be here. But we picked it up with the Simpson baseball
Don't
team.
ask about that, that doesn't fit code now either. Cause you can't have garages on a lot without a house.
That was all
Well,
prior to.
Prior to the code.
Yeah.
So
Moved
the
It's
the carport would be located on the
On the other
rear
side of
of,
this.
Other side.
on the rear of that building.
Back up to Wesley.
It'll be the backyard of between the townhomes that will be on the cul-de-sac up there, yeah.
And where is the structure that will be demolished?
Straight behind.
Back
Can't see
behind.
it.
Can't
Give
see
me
it
the
straight
parcel
behind it.
and I can show you. That one.
It's that
That one,
chicken,
yes.
chicken house back there.
And this is the pasture that I mentioned.
So you
And
can't see anything from Country Club, but you can from Scott Felton. When you're on Scott
if you
Felton
look
and you
between
look
these
back,
two
you can
houses,
see,
you can see this end, and that's why we chose to enclose.
you can
it.
see the back of that.
And we're asking for the variance to have the construction so that it will look nicer instead of just parking equipment back there or covering it with tarps, which I think would be less favorable to
Steve
neighbors.
Wall to make it look nicer.
Because this is zoned R1, right?
Yes, which,
And in theory, you should be running, I'm sure you're not running a business out of it.
No,
Are there other questions?
I mean, do you have a concern about that?
No, other than it looked like some heavy duty equipment back there.
it's a 1974 skid loader he uses to,
It's a hobby. It's broken again.
it's always broken.
I'm looking for
Trust me,
parts.
there is no
There's no
business,
business.
there's no business happening.
Nobody runs it except me because it breaks.
So
So
And the-
this zoning is,
the big garage is how many square feet?
140, go ahead.
I thought it was bigger than that.
She was asking you.
I thought it-
1,440 square feet.
1,004.
48 by 30.
But am I correct, Emily, in today's code? So they own the 2 lots, that second lot. Couldn't have a garage on it
Mm-mm.
in the new
Yeah.
code.
Not in our code now. And we do, cause every now and then we'll get a request from a property owner that they do wanna do that, they own an adjacent lot. And so what our practice now is
Mhm.
that they tie those lots together, so that way, if they were ever to sell those properties, they have to be
They have to be
incorporated as
hooked.
one.
Yep.
If they were to demolish the structure, then it would actually break the lot tie and then they could sell off that new lot. So kind of like a background of like how we handle those today, when we do have cases like that.
When I met with Emily and Tim, they mentioned that, and I agreed to do that, but it didn't seem at the end of the meeting that it was required. But if I need a lot tie agreement, which I'm not sure it is, I can certainly do that.
And it would more mainly be required if you were to add something or want to add anything to that second lot, then a lot tie would be required in that
Understand.
sense.
But today, before we go on to what this is, but today, if he has the 2 lots, I mean, and he's doing something to one of the lots, should he not tie those 2 lots together so that one isn't sold off by itself?
We can't force them to tie it unless they want to do anything with that second lot. So we wouldn't approve of another permit without that.
That
lot tie.
without something
And it
happening to
does
it?
require a city council review. It requires a signature and then it has to be recorded at the county. So it becomes a legal document that carries until it's broken by the
Something.
accessory structure being removed or.
But the math works if both lots are added together.
The math doesn't work when the both lots are added together.
It's still more than,
10% area.
more than 10%.
10% does, yeah.
Yeah, more than 10% and then more than 1,800.
But it's more than 1,800, because it's not either or, is it?
It's actually all of them. So if you have a smaller lot,
It's-
whatever 10% of that lot is, like, so you could have a lot that has, you're only allowed up to 1,500 square feet, just because it's smaller.
Mhm.
It wouldn't necessarily, like, you would, for this lot, specific lots, you would max out to 1,800 square feet.
Okay.
Oh,
Size.
no matter what the
Yeah, no
size.
matter what.
No matter what it is,
18
it's
18 is the
1,800.
max, no matter what
That's it.
percentage.
Plus,
Okay.
plus it's 10%, no more than 10%. So it's the two things, it's not
Yeah.
either or.
Whichever one it triggers first.
The word says nor, the language says nor, so it's both, but that's why I'm asking for
I heard you
variance.
say nor, but I was
Mhm.
thinking in previous times, because we're really focusing on. And again, yours is a different size lot, but we're really focusing on helping people to understand what size of accessory structures they can put in their yards.
So are there other questions?
I think the only other point that which I think has been made pretty clear is that those accessory buildings already exceed that 1,800 because of the circumstances that Emily and John both mentioned. And really, the purpose is we want to do the right thing for the neighborhood and for, I mean, yes, it'd be nice to be able to have those things covered, but we also want it to look nice for the neighborhood. And that's, I mean, we don't want to build another barn or chicken house on our, that's not anywhere close to our request.
My name's Troy Porter. I
Yes.
work for Wesley Life. So part of why we wanted
Nice to meet you.
to figure out what exactly is being proposed.
Come
And
up
Let
here.
me show you.
for what it is worth, everything we're hearing, I think we'd be favorable to it. We want to be good neighbors to the Hoymans. Obviously, our concern is as we develop the townhomes, what the view for those folks would be looking back. To me,
We've talked on the phone, but never met.
to me, her point is very clear. This looks a lot nicer. It's covered, it's protected for storage uses versus having equipment with tarps over it. So for what it's worth, that would be our opinion.
Certainly, that's worth
Yeah,
something. That-
appreciate it.
Thank you for
Appreciate your comments.
introducing yourself. You're welcome. Yeah, go ahead and have that.
John, do you have any other comments you want to share with us?
I had one about that north lot, but I don't know that it's relevant. It was about, I'll say it. Can you put the parcel one back up? My just kind of general experience in this whole thing is that this won't ever be split off either as a street, because we've been approached for putting a street in, but then you double front the Flaherty's here,
Right,
which is kind of a no-no.
sure.
And you have a T intersection here, T intersection here, T intersection here, which in city planning is usually a no-no. So I think this is all gonna stay together
But I always say,
as a single family.
when you win the lottery for 100 million, because we're not gonna win it for 1 million, and you move away,
Right,
then you don't care who buys that lot. And I know you will, but.
well, but if we do the lot type,
Hypothetically,
then it goes
thinking about
together.
when somebody leaves, if you don't tie, if they're not tied together, when we have lots that in the past have been able to have a structure on them by themselves, that's what we're trying to get away from.
Right.
Or
Are you saying that it might
you're
get?
saying it won't ever be sold, well,
No, I didn't mean that.
it wouldn't be sold off by itself for,
If it gets split off
Mhm.
by a developer that buys it from us or the next person,
Yeah.
it's gonna get split off to build 4 or 5 homes.
they'd be buying all of it, not just the one lot.
Well, not only that, but they're gonna have to get rid of all the buildings that are there now to get single-family residences, 4 or 5, with garage, whatever they want, like that, so our old house and the garages that are there would have to go away. In my humble opinion.
So
That's, yeah, I hear what you're saying and I get it. And I honestly had no idea that they weren't connected. So
That's.
We can-
I didn't either.
So
I'll
if
put it on my
we-
to-do list.
It's just a different parcel number.
If
It's
we
all the same
approved-
abstract. We don't have 2 abstracts, we have 1,
Really?
so.
If we
yeah.
approve this with the condition that the 2 lots would be joined, would then there be an issue? No, there wouldn't be an issue with that garage on that separate lot because it'd be one lot. I think I just answered my own
No,
question.
it'd be over, then no, then there would be an issue.
There is an issue
Because-
still.
Because you're
Still,
over.
It's the same,
It's the same
it's
issue.
the same
conditions
issue,
don't
but
change.
then we're eliminating them being
Mhm.
sold separately.
Like over the
Or
18.
did someone say then that joint goes away when it's sold?
Yeah, the lot tie would just break when, like, cause if they sold it and it had a lot tie, they would have to sell them together. They couldn't do one lot and sell the other lot to a different person.
Okay.
The only time it would truly break is if, and this is how we like typically have it written out in the lot tie agreements, is if the accessory structure was demolished, then that lot tie agreement could go away, cause it would become a vacant lot that would be developable for a single family. But in another case, it would be treated like with a lot tie, it would be treated as one parcel.
Okay, but I have a question. The existing car is 1,440 feet,
Correct.
correct? The carport is,
546.
so that's over the 1,800 right there.
Yes,
Oh, so that if you tie it together, it's just,
it doesn't
it's
matter.
more over the 1,800. Got it.
Yeah.
Right,
I was thinking those two were under.
but it could eliminate when they win the lottery.
The lottery issue.
Right.
I wish you said
Something
as
we
an
could-
example.
No, and I think, I mean, that's our wish, is that it would always stay together.
Sure, of
So
course.
And could we also, Emily, and I'll ask you, could we also put in there, if approved, that it also would have to have a side, it's still a carport, not a garage, but have a, I don't know what you'd call it.
Enclosure. Are you looking
It
at
has to be
enclosed?
closed on the west
Yeah.
side.
Yes.
That would
I
take
think-
care of the Wesley Acres.
The only thing I'd caution on this one is because I'm not really sure, you don't have a site plan yet, but if you're putting that overhang there, you still need to meet the setback of 5 foot from the property line. I'm not
It's on the
sure.
site plan.
Is it
Yes, we got 9.5 feet from the
9.5 feet with the addition? Okay.
Yep.
Then yeah, I mean, you could have that as a
Have that.
condition.
Because then it would also, in the future, when the Hoymans have one, but they're only selling the whole house in three-car garage to somebody else, they don't have to worry about Wesley Life at all because it'd be closed in on that side. And they could still get in and out from the other end because they have plenty of room around the other side.
The
And when you
south
look
side
at-
would be the only open,
The south side would be the only opening side.
but it could be
And
closed if
I
you
could
wanted
close
it.
it, and we'd probably put windows in the west side as well.
you get light in and.
Get light in, take advantage of the windows that are already there,
Right.
and to carry out the residential appearance of the building as opposed to a farm type building. Agriculture.
So if it were enclosed, we could put doors,
Yes.
doors at the center or just so that, okay.
Probably not the center, because I don't think we won't have enough room to get out, we're gonna get onto Troy.
Okay, Troy says
Be
it,
that north end.
he doesn't,
We trust you, we trust where we feel good about it, so some of that is up to your guys' aesthetic preference.
Got your number.
I think it works all the way around under those circumstances. So, are there any other comments or questions? Then I'll call for the vote. Motion, please.
All right, I move that we approve this with the following stipulations. The two lots are tied together and it is enclosed on the north and west sides.
Carport.
The carport is enclosed on the north and west sides.
Can I get clarification on enclosed? Does it have to go down into the ground, or can I leave 2 inches above a gravel floor? Do you have an opinion on that?
I imagine they're gonna come back and tell you, can it be gravel?
I would have to connect with Tim on building code. wise.
Whether it can be
is there a
gravel
concern
or-
about the appearance of leaving it open?
I'm concerned for the future, again, thinking for the future and Wesley, and when, again, we're not all around, that it cleans up and making it look aesthetically better in the back because it's residential. Here's why.
Good?
I'm not not their opinion, but I wanted to look at, I guess, in my mind, John, I thought that was probably concrete, but don't
What are
know
you
that for a
pointing
fact. Underneath the carport.
No, it's gravel. The north part of the garage has a slab there. One of the reasons we want to keep it gravel is leaky 1974 skid loader.
Sure, sure.
And some stuff
No,
like,
the code's not written for those, though. And that's why I didn't know if that can be.
Yeah, and staff wasn't aware of that, but John, just so you were aware, we don't allow for gravel anymore as a pavement surface. You would have to, it would have to be a solid surface, not gravel.
bricks.
You could do bricks, permeable pavers or, fine, so.
Do I need to, so we got the down to the ground part figured out or not?
We'll connect with Tim.
I don't think, yeah, I wouldn't,
Can you just defer to
in the
staff on that
motion,
one, maybe?
I would say tie the two together. Needs to be solid surface as per code on the bottom and at least down to the ground. Not in the ground, but again, that's a code thing, I would think. I would think it just down.
It's gonna be an unconditioned, open air, cold storage.
Yeah.
Right, I mean, it's not gonna be like heated or.
We're not gonna heat it or
No
anything like
plumbing,
that.
no electrical, no nothing.
But this diagram, actually looks like it's enclosed. I understand that you're not trying to mislead us or anything like
No.
that, but I do think it's immensely more appealing. You want it to look good, and I think it satisfies Jane's concern by our stipulating that it be enclosed. It doesn't have to be, as you've said, it doesn't have to be heated, doesn't have to be overly fancy, but if we can enclose it, I think that would probably make everybody feel better.
And who's on Wesley to the south? Does somebody live in that or is it a Wesley house also?
So we have neighbors to the south.
Jake and Kim Lepson is what their name is.
But are there trees in between there or?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's
You-
shrubs
you have
and then
shrubs down there.
they have a fence and I think they're growing.
Great Dane named Milo that guards the area.
Well, good.
So enclosed on two sides or three
Yes.
sides?
And
That's
west.
what I heard you say.
Two sides.
North and west, for
Yes.
sure.
So can you
Restate?
restate, please?
I move that we approve the ancillary structure, which we call a carport in this instance. And that it'll have some kind of solid flooring. It'll be enclosed on two sides with walls that come down close or very close to the ground. And it is the size that was stipulated here.
Okay. Second to that motion?
I will second that.
Okay, roll call, please.
Bad,
Yes.
Mitchell,
Yes.
and Whalen.
Yes.
Thank you. And thank all of you for your help in this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good process.
Yes.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, do you have anything else?
I don't think so.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
So moved.
all in favor, aye?
Aye.